Letters to Alpha Noel, sold by her parents for being infertile. She asked for love, and got an Alpha King on Christmas Eve. An original romance by Maggie Reed. Prologue. There are worse things than being rejected by your mate, and Izzy learned that the day her own parents sold her 5 gold coins, that was her price. Less than a well-bred horse, less than a winter harvest, and the contract spelled it out with clinical cruelty. Proven infertility reduces value. Like she was bruised fruit marked down. And the buyers were the Valdez, men with cold eyes and a reputation that made even strong wolves lower their gaze. And Izzy, wearing the same blue dress she'd worn 3 years earlier when Gabriel rejected her in front of the whole pack, already knew what was coming. A life as property, a decorative object in a stranger's house, a living reminder of everything everyone said was broken in her. 27 years of trying to believe she had purpose beyond producing pups. 27 years of the world proving her wrong. And so, on the night before her transfer, on the night before Christmas, she did something desperate. She wrote a letter to a legend to Alpha Noel, the ghost king of the north. The winter ruler from old stories whispered to little wolf girls when the snow got loud and the fire got low. The one who, the stories claimed, answered the prayers of the broken. She asked for only one thing: to be seen, not healed, not rescued, just recognized as more than an empty womb. And she buried the letter beneath the old oak at the northern boundary, not expecting anything because myths don't write back and miracles don't visit. Defective wolves. But when dawn came, when the black carriages of the Valdez arrived to take her, he came too, stepping out of the tree line as if carved from the storm itself. A massive white wolf, larger than anything alive, eyes like liquid silver locking onto her through the crowd and seeing her, really seeing her. And Izzy had no idea that the impossible stranger with blizzard eyes hadn't come merely to answer a letter. He'd come to claim her soul. Chapter 1. The paper shook in her hand so hard the words seemed to dance. For 5 gold coins and guaranteed territorial protection, Izzy Marquez, daughter of Alpha Rodrigo Marquez, will be delivered to House Valdez at the winter solstice. Her proven infertility reduces her value. Therefore, the agreed price reflects this defective condition. Defective. The word burning hotter than the scar of rejection Gabriel left behind when the medical tests confirmed she'd never bear pups, and he discarded her publicly, choosing her younger sister instead as if mates were replaceable parts, and she was the broken one, and now this. Her parents selling her like livestock. You understand why this has to happen, her father said in the office without meeting her eyes. The pack needs this alliance. And you're not useful here anymore. And Izzy felt her throat tighten, because she'd spent her whole life trying to be more than what they measured, more than a body built for breeding. And she forced, her voice steady. The Valdez have a reputation. People say they treat women like possessions, that Alpha Valdez has 5 wives and you should count yourself lucky anyone wants you, her mother cut in, looking out the window as if pity could substitute for love. 5 days, Izzy, pack your things. The handover is on Christmas Eve, like the universe itself wanted to mock her. That night, locked in her tiny room, the larger room had gone to her sister the moment she became the new Luna. Izzy did something she hadn't done since she was a kid. She wrote a letter, not to family who'd already thrown her away, not to Gabriel who'd shattered her, but to someone her grandmother's old legend said could hear the desperate Alpha Noel, the North King, the creature of snow and ash who granted wishes on the longest night of the year to the brave, or the foolish enough to ask. And she wrote, Dear Alpha Noel, I know you probably don't exist, that you're just a story to keep wolf children in line, but tonight, sitting here knowing that in 5 days I'll be delivered as payment for protection, I need to believe in something. I'm not asking for miracles, not asking you to cure my infertility, not asking my family to love me, not asking Gabriel to regret what he did. I'm asking for one thing only, someone to see me, not as defective, not as useless, not as merchandise, just as Izzy. If you exist, If there's any magic left in this world that still cares about broken wolves. Please, give me that chance. Desperately, Izzy. And she folded the letter, climbed out the window. No one was watching, no one ever watched, and buried it under the old oak at the northern line where the stories said Alpha Noel found letters left by those who begged. Nonsense, obviously. Yet when she returned, her fingers were numb with cold, and her heart held a spark of something she thought she'd lost. Hope. 3 nights later, the night before the delivery, she wrote another letter, because fear has its own gravity and silence makes it heavier. Dear Alpha Noel, you didn't answer. I didn't expect you to. But tomorrow they take me. And I need to leave this somewhere before I forget who I am. My name is Izzy. I like reading banned books about ancient mate laws. I can play the piano even though no one has asked me to in years. I wanted to be a healer, but they told me infertile women can't care for others if they can't fulfill their basic function. I don't want to go, but I have nowhere to. Run. I have no one. Please, if you exist, remember me. Remember that Izzy Marquez existed, that she wanted more. Always, Izzy. And she buried it beside the first while snow fell so hard the world disappeared. And when she came back inside, her father was waiting like a judge handing down a sentence. Tomorrow at noon the Valdez will come. Wear the blue dress. They demanded you be presentable. Presentable, like cattle at auction. She didn't sleep. She sat by the window watching snowfall bleach. The world clean. And when morning came gray and sharp, she went downstairs with a small suitcase, the blue dress swallowing her shoulders and pinching her waist, making her look exactly like what she was, someone being packaged for delivery. At noon, the black carriages arrived and men in dark uniforms stepped out, faces severe, eyes appraising her like inventory, and the oldest among them, his face cut with scars, smiled and said, "That the defective one?" And her father nodded. As agreed, infertile but healthy, obedient, won't cause trouble. And bile rose in Izzy's throat. But before they could shove her into the carriage, before the doors could close around her moving prison, the North answered. First a howl, deep and ancient, coming from beyond the boundary, a sound that froze every wolf present and woke something primitive in their bones, and the air changed, colder, heavier, charged with old power. And then he appeared, out of the tree line like he'd stepped through the storm. Itself, a huge wolf, white as death, eyes like molten silver glowing even under the weak daylight, and the Valdez guards instinctively reached for weapons as Izzy's father stepped forward and started, "Who dares?" But the wolf shifted, and Izzy forgot how to breathe because the man who rose from that white fur was impossible. So tall she had to tilt her head back, shoulders broad beneath a white fur coat, ash-gray hair to his shoulders framing a face of brutal beauty, sharp jaw, full mouth, and those silver eyes fixing on her with an intensity that felt like being set on fire. "Izzy Marquez," he said, voice deep like distant thunder. Not a question. And she couldn't form words, and when the Valdez men tried to block him, he didn't even look at them. He just looked, and they went pale, and stepped back, trembling like prey that suddenly remembers what a predator is. "You wrote letters," he said, stopping a few steps away as snow began to fall again, flakes landing in his hair like a crown, asking to be seen, asking to be chosen. And Izzy's heart stalled because no one was supposed to know that, and she managed, "How do you—" And his slow smile was dangerous and beautiful, and he said, "Because I'm the one you wrote to, little wolf. I am Noel, the Alpha King of the North, and I've come to claim what was offered." Chapter 2. The silence afterward was deafening. Izzy stood frozen, her mind scrambling to make sense of what she'd just heard. Alpha Noel, the legend, the childhood myth, standing there solid and real, saying he'd come for her. "This is ridiculous," her father said first, voice shaking even as he tried to sound like an alpha. "Izzy has already been sold. The contract with the Valdez is null," Noel cut in, his voice sharp as ice, never once taking his eyes off Izzy. The law of the sealed letters is older than any contract you mortals can write. When a she-wolf writes to the king of the north in true desperation, offering herself in exchange for salvation, and the king accepts, no mortal agreement can override it. The scarred Valdez guard stepped forward. We paid in gold. She belongs to us. Finally, Noel looked at him, and Izzy saw the exact moment the guard realized his mistake. The air around Noel seemed to ripple, his power radiating in visible waves, and without changing posture he became something larger, darker, predatory. No one belongs to you, Noel said quietly, and it was more terrifying because of how calm it was. And if you try to take her, you'll remember why even the bravest fear the north. It wasn't an empty threat. Izzy felt it like instinct carved deep. This man, this alpha, could destroy everyone here without even shifting. Izzy? Noel said, turning back to her, and his expression softened. Only slightly, but enough that she noticed. You wrote me 2 letters. In the first, you asked to be seen. In the second, you asked to be remembered. I saw you, and I came. Why? She managed in a whisper, the words scraping out of her throat. I'm defective, infertile. I have nothing to offer. Something pained flickered in his silver eyes. You believe that? Believe that not having children makes you worthless? Izzy dropped her gaze, unable to hold that intensity. It's what everyone says. Then everyone is a fool. Noel held out his hand, stopping just short of her, leaving the choice with her. Come with me, Izzy. Come to the north, where the snow covers old wounds, where you can learn who you are beyond what they told you to be. And if I refuse? She asked, because she needed to know if this was just another cage dressed up like rescue. Then I leave, he said simply, and you go with the Valdez to live the life you were sold to live. But know this. Once in a generation, the King of the North chooses a companion, and I chose you, not for heirs, not for politics, but because when I read your words, I felt your soul, and it called to mine. Izzy's heart thundered so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Companion, not just escape, not just protection, something sacred and impossible. You don't even know me, she whispered. Not yet, he said, and a hint of a smile touched his mouth. But learning you every day would be an honor, not a burden. Behind her, her father muttered about insult and broken agreements. The Valdez guards tensed, hands near blades. Her mother stood in the doorway, unreadable. No one was looking at Izzy. No one was asking what she wanted, except the impossible man with storm-silver eyes, holding out his hand like a vow. Izzy drew a breath and made the choice that would rewrite everything. She placed her hand in his. The reaction was immediate. Heat erupted where their skin touched, racing up her arm and flooding her chest. It wasn't the mate bond. She knew what that felt like. She'd felt it with Gabriel before it shattered. But it was something ancient and powerful that made her inner wolf lift its head for the first time in years, waking, recognizing. Noel's eyes flared, the silver turning almost white. You feel it? Izzy could only nod. He drew her gently closer, then faced the others. Izzy Marcus is now under my protection. Anyone who tries to claim her declares war on the North. And we do not lose wars. Wait! Her father lunged forward. You can't just... But Noel was already shifting, pulling Izzy with him. She felt the change spark in her too. Something he was doing, making her access her wolf form more easily than ever. In seconds, 2 wolves stood where humans had been. Noel massive and white as a winter ghost, Izzy smaller, brown gold fur she'd always hated for being so ordinary. Noel brushed his muzzle to hers, a silent question. Do you trust me? Izzy pressed into him. Yes. And then they ran. The forest blurred in white and green. Noel kept a pace she could match, always beside her, never ahead. Like they were equals. When they finally stopped hours later, the sun was sinking, painting the snow rose and gold. They shifted back, and Izzy realized she was trembling. Not from cold, but from wild, bright exhilaration. I ran, she said, half laughing like she couldn't quite believe her own voice. I actually ran. You saved yourself? Noel corrected, wrapping a cloak around her with careful hands. There's a difference. Izzy looked at him. Really looked. And in the sunset, he was almost unreal. Beautiful in a way that hurt. Why me? She asked. Out of every she-wolf in the world, why did my letters matter? Noel went quiet for a long moment, gaze drifting to the distant mountains beginning to rise on the horizon. Because I know what it is to be called defective, he said at last, voice low. To be treated like something broken because you don't fit the shape they wanted. Izzy blinked, stunned. You? But you're powerful, feared, a king, and cursed. He turned to face her, and raw pain lived in his eyes. 100 years ago, a king of the north loved a witch who couldn't love him back. When she rejected him, he forced her, and with her last words she cursed his line. Every king after him would be unable to produce heirs. The bloodline would end not from lack of power, but from sterility. Izzy felt the air leave her lungs. You're infertile, Noel said, and his bitter smile didn't reach his eyes. So you see, little Izzy, I didn't choose you despite your so-called flaw. I chose you because of it, because you understand, because we don't need children to be whole, and maybe together we can be more than the broken pieces they told us we were. Tears burned in her eyes. No one had ever said anything like that, ever suggested she could be complete without fixing what the world labeled wrong. Where are we going? She asked, voice thick. Noel held out his hand again. Home, he said, to the northern castle, where it's Christmas every day for those who still believe in magic. And when Izzy took his hand this time, it wasn't desperation or lack of options. It was choice, clean and deliberate. Chapter 3. The northern castle was impossible. Izzy stopped at the forest's edge, mouth parted as the structure revealed itself. Not a traditional stone fortress with gray walls and war towers, but a palace carved straight from the mountains, ice and packed snow forming walls that glowed blue-white under the rising moon, elegant spires that looked grown from frozen earth, windows catching light and scattering it into 1,000 prism colors. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's yours, Noel said behind her, his warmth close but never pressing. If you stay. If, not when. Always leaving her the door. Wolves appeared as they moved toward the main gate, dozens of them in human and animal forms stepping from smaller buildings around the castle, and every single one paused to stare. Izzy shrank on instinct, years of contempt-trained reflex telling her to disappear. But Noel placed a hand at the small of her back. Light, grounding. Pack, he called, voice carrying without effort. This is Izzy. She is my guest. Treat her with the respect you would give me. Not mate, not Luna. Guest, giving her space to decide what she would become. A young woman stepped forward, maybe a few years younger than Izzy. Bright red hair braided intricately, curious green eyes. Welcome, I'm Yara. I handle the household. You must be exhausted after the journey. The smile was genuine. No judgment, no pity, no morbid curiosity. Just warmth. Thank you, Izzy managed. Yara will show you your rooms, Noel said. And tomorrow, when you're rested, we'll talk. About what it means to be here. About the law of the sealed letters. About everything. He hesitated like he wanted to say more, then only nodded and walked toward the main tower. When Izzy looked uncertain, Yara gave a small grin. He's nervous, you know. For the first time in decades, he's nervous. Kind of adorable. Nervous? Izzy couldn't imagine that ice and power creature nervous. You wrote to him, Yara said, as she guided Izzy through shimmering corridors lined with ice sculptures that never melted. You basically offered your soul, and he accepted. Which means now he has to prove he won't hurt you or trap you, that you made the right choice. The rooms Yara showed her were breathtaking. A wide bed layered with white furs, a fireplace already lit with blue flames that gave no smoke, floor-to-ceiling windows opening to moonlit mountains, and books, an entire shelf of them. How did he know? Izzy whispered, fingertips brushing spines she recognized, ancient mate law texts, pack histories, even the banned romances she'd loved as a girl. He read your letters, Yara said simply, more than once, according to our librarian, trying to understand you, trying to do this right. Confusion twisted with a dangerous new hope. But why? He doesn't even know me. Yara sat on the edge of the bed, expression turning serious. Can I be honest? Please. Noel is 347 years old. He was born under the curse his great-grandfather created. He spent 3.5 centuries watching other packs celebrate births and heirs and futures, things he could never have. And the whole time he was alone, because what she-wolf would choose an alpha who can't give her children? The pain of that hit Izzy in the chest. 300 years of being labeled defective. So when your letters arrived, Yara continued, when he read about a she-wolf who understood rejection, who was discarded for the same reason he was avoided, something shifted. For the first time he saw possibility, not of heirs or dynasty, but companionship, someone who would understand him. But I still haven't said yes, Izzy whispered, to being a mate, to being anything beyond a guest. And he won't pressure you, Yara said gently as she stood. Stay as long as you need, meet the pack, get to know him, then decide. No pressure, no deadline. Just live, Izzy, maybe for the first time. After Yara left, Izzy was alone for the first time in hours. She went to the window and watched heavy snow fall in thick, quiet flakes. Her fingers rose to her neck where there was no mark now, where Gabriel had once placed one, then removed it, leaving clean skin and invisible scars. And where, if she accepted Noel, a new mark would appear. A cursed mate, 2 infertile wolves, something that should have sounded pathetic, tragic. So why did it feel possible? A soft knock turned her around. Come in. Noel entered wearing simple clothes, dark pants and a white shirt that made him look less like a king and more like someone real, and he carried a tray. I thought you might be hungry. You haven't eaten since this morning. This morning, when she'd been about to be taken by the Valdez, felt like weeks ago. Izzy accepted the tray. Fresh bread, cheese, fruit, warm spiced wine. Thank you. May I? He asked, gesturing to the chair by the fire. She nodded, sitting at the edge of the bed, the tray on her lap, and for a long moment, only the crackle of the flames filled the room. Yara told me about the curse, Izzy said at last. About the 300 years. Noel went still. She shouldn't. I asked her to be honest, Izzy said, setting the tray aside. I need to understand. Why me? Noel, really. Not pretty stories about souls calling to each other. The truth. He studied her, those silver eyes seeing too much, then exhaled and dragged a hand through his hair. The truth? I read your first letter and felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Rage. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Rage that they treated you like discard, that they measured your worth by breeding, that they dared to sell you like property. His voice roughened, hands tightening. Then I read your second letter and felt recognition. Every word could have been mine. The terror of being forgotten, the need to be seen as more than the sum of your flaws. And I thought, here is someone who understands. He got up and paced. So yes, maybe it was selfish. Maybe I saw in you a chance not to be alone anymore, to have someone beside me who wouldn't see me as defective or cursed, only as Noel. Izzy rose too, heart hammering. And if I can't be what you need, if I'm too broken? He crossed the space in 2 steps, stopping so close she could see darker flecks in the silver of his eyes. Then we'll be broken together, he said softly. But Izzy, you're not broken. You're exactly as you should be, and anyone who made you feel otherwise was wrong. Tears spilled before she could stop them, years of rejection and humiliation rushing up all at once. Noel lifted a hand and hesitated. May I? She nodded, and he wiped her tears with his thumb so carefully it only made more fall. Stay, he murmured, even if it's only tonight. Let me show you there's life beyond the pain. And Izzy, tired of running, tired of shrinking, tired of being alone, simply let herself lean into him. Noel caught her, strong arms closing around her, and for the first time in years, Izzy felt safe. Chapter 4. Izzy woke to sunlight, impossible since the north was supposedly always under snow, pouring through the window, and it took a moment to remember where she was. The luxurious room, the soft furs, the peace so different from the constant tension in her father's house, and the memory of strong arms holding her while she cried until sleep finally took her. Noel had stayed. She saw him now in the chair, awkwardly positioned, head resting on his hand. Still asleep, ash-gray hair falling over his face and softening the harsh lines, looking less like a feared king and more like an exhausted man carrying 347 years of loneliness. Izzy rose quietly, took a blanket, and draped it over him. He didn't move, breathing deep and steady. She dressed in clothes she found in the wardrobe, all the right size, she noticed, and stepped out to explore, and in daylight the castle was even more striking. Corridors glowing with an ethereal ice blue that somehow didn't feel cold, the temperature perfect, wolves passing with respectful smiles and nods that didn't pry. She wandered into a vast library, 3-story shelves, enchanted rolling ladders, comfortable tables near crackling fireplaces, and a sacred hush only libraries seem to hold. "Ah, you found my sanctuary," a voice said, and an elderly man approached with white hair, round glasses, and a warm smile. "I'm Tobias, head librarian and keeper of forbidden knowledge," he winked. "You must be Izzy." "Everyone knows my name," she said, more observation than complaint. "Small pack, news travels fast, especially when our reclusive king shows up with a guest for the first time in, well, ever," Tobias said, guiding her to a table. "Coffee? Tea, or a potion that makes you forget your problems for an hour?" Despite herself, Izzy laughed. "Coffee, please." As Tobias prepared drinks from a hidden shelf, Izzy's eyes caught on a title, Ancient Mating Laws, Lost Truths. And when she reached for it, Tobias nodded. "Ah, that one, written 1,000 years ago by a witch who studied mate bonds. Great reading if you like learning how our society twisted everything," he said. And when Izzy echoed, "Twisted," he explained that mate laws were originally about souls recognizing each other. Nothing about reproduction or dynasties, just two people whose essences fit. But over centuries, alphas decided mate meant heirs, and a female's value lived in her womb, which Tobias dismissed as absolute nonsense. Izzy felt something tighten in her chest, because everyone believed it now. And Tobias answered bluntly, everyone was wrong. True mate bonds were rare. Most so-called mates were forced biological compatibility, but a true bond transcended flesh. It was soul recognition. And when Izzy asked how you know it's true, he smiled. You feel it, not just attraction or breeding chemistry, but peace. Like a missing piece finally clicks. Peace. Izzy thought of last night in Noel's arms, how safe she'd felt, how whole. Then she asked about the law of the sealed letters, and Tobias leaned back and called it old magic, ancient, where a she-wolf in true desperation writes to the king of the north offering herself in exchange for salvation, invoking a primal pact. If the king accepts, a bond forms, not complete yet, but potential, a path toward a mate bond if both choose it, and if one doesn't choose, it fades with no pain and no consequences, only an unfulfilled possibility. Then Tobias added something that made Izzy's breath catch. In 347 years, Noel had never answered a single letter before her, and when she asked why, Tobias said it was because she was the first to ask not for wealth, not for power, not for a cure, only to be seen, and for someone who'd been invisible for centuries because of a curse. That meant everything. Izzy spent the day exploring, meeting the head cook who made her try 3 stews, finding training fields where male and female wolves sparred side by side, discovering indoor gardens where frost flowers never wilted. And everywhere she went, they treated her with kindness. Not like a fragile guest, not like a future Luna they had to impress, simply like Izzy. By sunset, she reached the great hall for dinner. Long tables filling the space, wolves gathered in loud, happy clusters, and at the far end a raised table where Noel sat talking with elders. and he saw her the moment she entered, his eyes finding hers through the crowd and something passing between them. Recognition? Warmth. Noel stood immediately and came down from the platform. Conversation dulled as he approached and held out his hand. "Will you join me?" he asked. Not an order, a request. And Izzy placed her hand in his, feeling that familiar flare of heat as he guided her to the raised table, pulled a chair beside his, not below, beside, and waited until she sat before taking his own seat. "Did you explore?" he asked quietly. "Yes. Your librarian is charming and talkative," she said. And Noel laughed, rich and genuine, saying Tobias loved having new ears for his theories. Dinner was served, roast lamb, vegetables, fresh bread, and Izzy ate with Noel beside her, aware of how his presence filled empty places she hadn't even known were hollow. After the main dishes were cleared, Noel's voice turned serious. "There's something you need to know about the law of the sealed letters, about what comes next." Izzy's stomach tightened. "What?" "The law creates a potential bond between us," Noel said, his hand finding hers under the table, fingers lacing. "But for it to become a true mate bond, 3 rituals must be completed. The first is acceptance, agreeing to come to the north, which already happened." "And the other 2? Izzy asked. "The second is claiming, when I mark you with a bite, sealing the bond for all to see. It's permanent," Noel said. And Izzy swallowed hard at the thought of permanent marks. Gabriel had once marked her and then removed it, leaving invisible scars. So Noel hurried to add that it didn't have to be now or tomorrow or even this month. He would wait years, decades. She had to know the possibility was there. "And the third?" she asked. Noel held her gaze. "Consummation, when we unite completely, body, mind, and soul. When the bond becomes unbreakable," he said. And heat rose in Izzy's face. But Noel squeezed her hand gently and repeated there was no pressure and no deadline. She had total control over when, if, it happened. "And if I decide never?" Izzy asked softly. "If I stay only as a guest?" Pain flickered across Noel's face before he masked it. "Then you stay as a guest," he said. "And I'm grateful for your presence in whatever form you allow." He meant it. Izzy saw it in the brutal honesty of his eyes. So she started, "Noel, But before she could say anything else, the doors of the great hall burst open, and Gabriel, her ex-mate, the man who had destroyed her, staggered in with wild eyes and blood staining his shirt. "Izzy," he panted. "Thank the gods. I came to save you." Chapter 5. The silence that crashed over the great hall was absolute. Izzy went rigid, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were seeing. Gabriel, here, blood on his shirt, staring at her like some heroic savior instead of the man who had shattered her. Noel rose slowly, placing his body between Izzy and the intruder with a calm that felt like a blade. "You crossed into my territory without permission," Noel said, his voice pure ice. "Explain yourself before I take your head." "I came for my mate," Gabriel said, brushing off the threat like it was nothing, and the eyes Izzy once remembered as warm were wild now, strange. "Izzy, you don't have to stay here. I made a mistake. I never should have rejected you." The words hit like physical blows. Memories flooding. Gabriel calling her defective. Gabriel choosing her sister. Gabriel announcing to the whole pack that Izzy wasn't worth keeping. "Get out," she whispered. "Izzy, please, get out!" she screamed, startling even herself as years of humiliation and pain detonated at once. "You rejected me. You chose my sister. You called me defective in front of the entire pack." "I was wrong," Gabriel insisted, stepping forward, only for a wall of North wolves to slide between them in an instant, snarling. And Gabriel stopped with his hands raised, desperate. "I was wrong, Izzy. I didn't know. I didn't understand." "Didn't understand what?" Noel asked, voice low and dangerous. "That publicly discarding your partner would destroy her? That measuring her worth by her ability to breed is cruelty?" Gabriel didn't even look at Noel, his focus locked on Izzy as if Noel were just weather. "Izzy, your sister is pregnant, and when I found out, I realized It should have been you. It should have always been you. Come back with me. We can find a way, adopt orphan rogues, or what? Izzy stepped forward, anger overpowering fear. Or you'll tolerate me because you realized at least I wouldn't have children with another man because I'd be convenient? It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Izzy said, trembling now, grief turning into incandescent rage. You want me back? Not because you love me, not because you finally see my value, but because your new mate is carrying the baby you always wanted, and suddenly you realized you'll always be second. You'll be the inferior one. Gabriel went pale because she'd hit the center of him. You didn't come to save me, Izzy continued, her voice hardening into something steady. You came to use me again, and this time the answer is no. You don't understand, Gabriel said, panicking now. The Valdez came looking for you. When you disappeared, they demanded repayment or compensation. Your father, he offered your sister in your place, my pregnant mate, Izzy. They'll take her in 3 days if you don't come back and fulfill the original contract. Izzy's blood turned to ice at the thought of her sister, pregnant, being handed to monsters. Noel's hand settled gently on her shoulder. Izzy, look at me. She obeyed, meeting those silver eyes, calm, centered, immovable. This is not your responsibility, Noel said firmly. Your father made that choice. Your sister participated in your humiliation. You owe them nothing. But she's pregnant, Izzy whispered, and the words tasted like old wounds. And the Valdez are monsters, I know, Noel said, then turned to Gabriel with a chill that felt like the room remembered winter. The blood on you. Where did it come from? Gabriel hesitated. From the guards at your border, he admitted. They tried to stop me. I didn't want to hurt them, but I had to reach Izzy. You hurt my wolves, Noel said, and the temperature dropped so fast it was like breath became glass, frost forming on the windows, ice crawling across the floor. You entered my territory, threatened my guest. I wasn't threatening, Gabriel started, but his voice faltered under Noel's glacial stare. You came into my home and demanded that a woman under my protection return to a place where she was abused, humiliated, and sold like livestock, Noel said, each word landing like a hammer. That is a threat. The air was so cold Izzy could see her own breath, and around them the North Pack watched, coiled and ready. Noel, Izzy said, touching his arm and feeling the muscle locked like stone. Don't. For a heartbeat she saw the predator beneath the civilized surface. 3 centuries of power, rage contained, instinct screaming protect, eliminate, destroy. Please, she whispered. He isn't worth it. Slowly, Noel drew a breath, and the cold eased, the ice retreating, though his eyes still burned silver white when he faced Gabriel again. You have 2 choices, Noel said with lethal calm. Leave my territory now and never return, or stay and learn why even the Valdez fear the North. And my mate? Gabriel pleaded, breaking. Izzy, please, I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but she's innocent in this. She isn't innocent, Izzy said, and truth hurt. She knew you were my mate when she accepted you. She knew what it would do to me, and she chose her desire over me, just like you did, just like my parents did. Izzy blinked back tears, voice shaking but certain. But you're right about one thing. The baby is innocent, and no child deserves the Valdez. She turned to Noel. Is there anything we can do? Noel's expression softened as he looked at her. Your heart is too big for your own good. It's a curse, she tried to joke, but it came out unsteady. Noel studied her for a long moment, then exhaled. There is a way. The law of the sealed letters can be transferred. How? If someone else writes a letter in true desperation, offering themselves in exchange for salvation, and I accept, the original contract with the Valdez breaks, Noel said, because they can't claim someone who is under the North's protection. Gabriel stepped forward, hope flashing. But, Noel cut him off, it has to be true desperation, not strategy, not manipulation. The magic knows intent, and if your mate isn't genuinely asking to be saved, only trying to escape the consequences of her choices, it won't work. She is, Gabriel insisted. She's terrified, crying every night. She never wanted this. Then let her write, Izzy said quietly. Let her ask, and Noel will decide whether to accept. Gabriel looked between them, realizing it was the only mercy he'd get. Fine, I'll tell her, he said, then swallowed. But Izzy, please, when this is over, would you at least consider— No, Izzy said, final as a door closing. You made your choice 3 years ago, and I made mine yesterday. We have no future, Gabriel, not even as friends. Something cracked across Gabriel's face, and he nodded once. I understand. He turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. For everything. Being sorry doesn't undo the damage, Izzy said. But I hope you're better for her and for your child than you were for me. Then he was gone, escorted by 6 North wolves to make sure he left without causing more harm. Izzy's legs weakened, and Noel caught her immediately, guiding her back into the chair as the great hall emptied to give them privacy. Are you okay? Noel asked, kneeling in front of her, hands gentle on her knees. Izzy let out a laugh with no humor. I just saved the woman who stole my mate. I must be out of my mind. You're compassionate, Noel corrected. There's a difference. She hurt me, Noel, Izzy said, voice breaking. She and Gabriel, they destroyed everything. I know, Noel said softly, his thumbs tracing slow circles meant to steady her. But you chose to be better than what they did to you. You chose to protect an innocent child. That's strength, not weakness. Tears finally fell. Then why does it hurt so much? Because forgiveness isn't forgetting, Noel said. It's choosing not to let the pain define you. Noel stood and drew her into his arms. And you, my Izzy, refuse to be defined by anything except your own choices. Izzy clung to him, breathing him in. Pine and snow and something wild and ancient. And slowly, the ache began to loosen its grip. If the letter comes, she murmured against his chest. Will you accept? That depends, Noel said, pulling back just enough to look into her face. Do you want me to accept? I want the baby safe, Izzy said, then hesitated. But if you accept, she'll come here to the north. I'd have to see her, see them. No, Noel said firmly. If I accept her letter, the Valdez contract breaks. But she doesn't have to come to the north. I can grant protection at a distance. Declare her under my custody without demanding her presence. The Valdez won't dare challenge that, and she can stay wherever she chooses. Relief washed through Izzy. You'd do that? For you, I'd do anything, Noel said, fingertips gentle against her face. Then his voice dropped, rawer. But Izzy, you need to understand something. When Gabriel said you should go back, that it was your responsibility, every cell in my body wanted to destroy him, not just for invading, but for daring to try to take you from me. His eyes flared silver again. You became mine in less than 2 days. Not by magic, not by old law, but because when I look at you, I see future. I see home. I see the other half of my soul I thought would never exist. Izzy's heart was racing. Noel, you don't have to answer right now, he rushed to say. I just need you to know, completely, without a doubt, that you're wanted here, that your presence isn't merely tolerated or accepted out of convenience, it's celebrated. And then he did something that stole the air from her lungs entirely. He dropped to one knee. The Alpha King of the North, 3 centuries of power in flesh and bone, knelt in front of her. Be my mate, Izzy. Not because ancient laws say so, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because I choose you. Every day, for every century I have left, I would choose you. Izzy couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She could only feel the weight of that moment, those words. I need time, she whispered. Then time is what you'll have. Noel stood, kissed her forehead softly. As much as you need. But as he stepped back, Izzy knew the truth. She'd already chosen. She just needed the courage to admit it. Chapter 6. The letter arrived 3 days later. Izzy was in the inner gardens, practicing the combat movements Yara had taught her, when a messenger appeared, young, nervous, holding an envelope like it might burn his skin. "For the Alpha King," he panted. From outside. Noel appeared seconds later, as if he'd sensed it. He took the envelope, his eyes meeting Izzy's. "It's from her." Izzy's stomach tightened. "Can you read it here? I want to know." Noel hesitated, then broke the seal. His eyes moved over the words, his expression darkening line by line. At last he exhaled. "It's real," he said quietly. "The desperation. The fear. She's terrified, Izzy. Not just of the Valdez, but of everything. Of stealing your mate, of making the wrong choices, of bringing a child into this chaos." "So you'll accept?" Noel looked at her for a long moment. "Do you want me to accept?" Izzy drew a slow breath. The answer should have been no. The answer should have been to let them face the consequences of betrayal. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw was a child, innocent, helpless. "Yes," she whispered. "Accept. Protect them." Something crossed Noel's eyes. Admiration, maybe, or something even deeper. "You're extraordinary." "I'm an idiot." Izzy tried to laugh, but it came out cracked. "No." Noel crossed the space between them, took her hands. "You're better than everyone who hurt you. And one day you'll understand this isn't weakness. It's the rarest kind of strength." The following week passed in a strange haze. Noel sent a formal declaration. Izzy's sister and her baby were under Northern protection. The Valdez, faced with the possibility of war against the most feared king of the frozen lands, backed down. The contract was voided, the gold was returned, and Izzy found herself free. Free from the weight of being a bargaining chip. Free from the expectation of returning. Free to simply exist. But freedom, she discovered, was frightening. "You've been quiet," Noel observed one night as they sat near the fireplace in his room. Something that had become their ritual, those pre-sleep hours where they did nothing but talk. "Thinking," Izzy answered, watching the flames dance. About what I do now." She turned to face him. "You gave me protection, a home, the freedom to choose. But Noel, I don't know who I am when I'm not the rejected daughter, the discarded mate, the defective woman. Who is Izzy when all of those layers are stripped away?" Noel was quiet for a moment, then moved to sit on the floor in front of her, taking her hands. "Do you want to know what I see when I look at you?" She nodded, throat tight. "I see a woman who ran even when she didn't know where she was going, who asked only to be seen, not saved, who chose to protect the people who hurt her, because that's who she is at the core." His thumbs traced slow patterns across her palms. "I see someone brave, compassionate, stronger than she realizes. I see the other half of me that waited 3 centuries to be found. And if I'm not any of that," Izzy whispered, "what if I'm just scared and broken and pretending to be brave? Then you're human. Or wolf, technically." A smile touched his mouth. "Izzy, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You only have to be you. And you, with all your fear, your doubts, your scars, are exactly who I want." Tears burned behind her eyes. "Why?" "Because when you look at me, you don't see the king. You don't see 300 years or power or curse. You see Noel. And no one in 3 centuries, has ever made me feel as seen as you do." Something broke inside Izzy. Every defense she'd built, every wall meant to protect her shattered heart, cracked wide open. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Afraid to trust this, to trust you, to believe I can be happy without it being ripped away." "I know." Noel stood, gently drawing her up with him. "And I won't rush you. But Izzy, let me show you something." He guided her to the window, pointing toward the mountains under the moonlight. "See those peaks? They've been there for millions of years. Storms came and tried to break them. Avalanches, earthquakes, ice ages. And they stayed." He turned to her, silver eyes steady. "That's what I'm offering. Not perfection, not a life without storms, but permanence, stability. Someone who will be here through every doubt, every fear, every moment you want to run. I'll be here. Izzy looked into those eyes and saw absolute truth. And something inside her, the part that had been hidden, guarded, afraid, began to wake up. "Show me," she whispered. "What?" "Show me this is real, that I can trust it." She took a step closer. "Kiss me, Noel. Not because of magic, not because of ancient law, but because you want to." His eyes flared. "Izzy, please." And he obeyed. The kiss was different from the first, back in the forest, when everything had been desperation and need. This was choice, deliberate, aware, heavy with promise. Noel drew her close, one hand in her hair, the other at her waist. His mouth moved against hers with reverence, like she was something precious, sacred. And Izzy felt it, the bond between them, once only potential, now pulsing alive. Not complete, not yet, but real, undeniable. When they parted, both breathing hard, Noel rested his forehead against hers. "Still afraid?" he murmured. "Terrified," Izzy admitted. "But I want this anyway." "Then you'll have it." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. "At your pace. On your terms. Always." And that night, when Izzy finally slept, it was in his arms. And for the first time in years, she didn't have nightmares. Chapter 7. The winter solstice arrived with heavy snow and a sky impossibly full of stars. Izzy woke to find Noel already dressed, a mysterious smile on his lips. "Get up," he said, eyes bright with excitement. "Today is special." "Why?" "Because it's Christmas, and there are traditions to honor." He led her downstairs through hallways decorated with pine garlands and ice lights that shimmered like fireflies. The great hall had been transformed, an enormous tree at the center, crystal ornaments catching the light, tables overflowing with food, and wolves, hundreds of them, gathered, laughing, singing, celebrating. "What is this?" Izzy whispered, awestruck. "Christmas in the north," Yara appeared, grinning. "The only day of the year the king allows a full-blown party. Welcome to the chaos, sweetheart." The next hours blurred into joy. Izzy found herself pulled from group to group, tasting foods, listening to stories, dancing to songs she didn't know, but whose rhythm her body somehow understood. And through it all, Noel was there. Not overbearing, not controlling. Just present. A hand at the small of her back when the crowd got too tight. A steady smile when she started to feel overwhelmed. An anchor. When night fell and the festivities peaked, Noel lifted his hand. Silence dropped instantly. "Tonight," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly, "we celebrate not only the solstice, but a new beginning. Many of you have met Izzy in these past weeks. You've seen her kindness, her strength, her grace." He turned, his eyes finding hers through the crowd. "And I ask her, in front of all of you, to accept her place, not as a guest, but as family, as part of this pack, as mine." The air left Izzy's lungs. This was the claiming, the second ritual, public. Noel stepped down from the platform and stopped in front of her. "Izzy Marquez, would you honor me by being my mate, my Luna, my choice, today and always?" Every wolf in the hall watched, waiting, and Izzy realized this was the moment, the point where she chose past or future, fear or courage, pain or possibility. She looked at Noel, this impossible man who'd read her desperate letters and come for her, who'd given her choice when everyone else had taken choice from her, who saw her as whole when the world called her broken. "Yes," she whispered. "What?" Noel smiled. "I didn't hear you." "Yes," Izzy said louder, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I accept. I choose you." The pack's roar of approval shook the rafters, but Izzy barely heard it, because Noel had pulled her into his arms, spun her, laughing in a way she'd never heard from him. Pure, unrestrained joy. When he set her down, his eyes were shining. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "Because once I mark you, it's permanent. Unbreakable." "I know." Izzy cupped his face. "And I'm sure." "Then forgive me," Noel murmured as he leaned in. "Because this will hurt. His mouth found the curve where her neck met her shoulder. For a moment, he only kissed there, gentle. Then his fangs slid out, and he bit. White-hot pain burst through her, but it was quickly drowned by something else. The bond between them leaping alive, complete, undeniable. Izzy gasped, knees weakening, but strong arms held her upright. When Noel pulled back, licking the wound to seal it, his eyes were fully silver. "Mine," he growled. "Primitive. Possessive. Perfect. Yours," Izzy agreed. And then he kissed her, and the crowd erupted, and Izzy finally understood what it meant to be chosen, to be loved, to be seen. Chapter 8. The mark changed everything and nothing. Izzy woke the next morning in Noel's arms, her fingers unconsciously tracing the design now permanently stamped into her skin. A snow wolf surrounded by stars. Beautiful. His. "Do you regret it?" Noel murmured, still half asleep. Not even a little. And it was true. But as the days unfolded, Izzy realized accepting the bond was only the beginning. There were expectations now, not from Noel, never from him, but from the pack. Wolves came to her with disputes to mediate, requests for guidance, questions about the future. "They see you as Luna," Yara explained when Izzy admitted her anxiety, "as the Alpha's equal partner. Your word carries weight now." "But I don't know anything about leading," Izzy protested. "Then learn," Yara said with a grin. "You have time." And Noel. But something else was bothering Izzy. Something she finally voiced one night as she lay with Noel, the fireplace casting dancing shadows. "The third ritual," she said quietly. "Consummation. When does it happen?" Noel went still, then turned to face her. "When you're ready. There's no deadline, Izzy. But you want it. It wasn't a question." "Want." Noel let out a low, rough laugh. "I ache for it. Every time you smile, every time you touch my hand, every time you fall asleep in my arms, every cell in my body screams to complete the bond." He touched her cheek with careful gentleness. "But desire isn't entitlement, and I will never, never take what isn't freely given." Izzy studied him, the brutal honesty in his eyes, the tension in his jaw that spoke of iron control, and something shifted inside her. Fear beginning to retreat, trust taking root. "Show me," she whispered. Noel's eyes widened. "Izzy, not everything, not yet." Heat rose to her face. "But show me it can be good, that it isn't only duty or expectation, that it can be us." Noel held utterly still for a beat. Then he moved, rolling over her, but bracing his weight on his elbows, leaving space for her to slip away if she wanted. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, "and I stop. Understand? Understand." And then he kissed her. Not the gentle, reverent kisses of the past days, but something deeper, hungrier, like he'd been holding himself back for too long. His mouth claimed hers with restrained fire, his tongue tracing her lower lip until she gasped and opened for him. His hands, always so careful, slid along her sides, tracing her curves through the thin fabric of her nightgown. When his thumbs brushed the sides of her breasts, Izzy arched with a sound she didn't recognize as her own. "You like that?" Noel murmured against her mouth. "Yes," she breathed. "And this?" His mouth moved along her jaw, finding the sensitive spot beneath her ear. "Yes." He kept going, every touch deliberate, every kiss intentional, teaching her that pleasure didn't have to arrive with pain, that intimacy could be choice instead of demand. When he finally stopped, both of them breathing hard, bodies warm and tense, Noel kissed her forehead. "This is only the beginning," he promised. "When you're ready for more, tell me, and I'll spend hours, days, showing you just how good it can be." Izzy pulled him into an embrace, her heart pounding. "Thank you." For what? For waiting. For asking. For making it beautiful instead of terrifying. Noel held her tighter. Always. But peace didn't last. 3 days later, a messenger arrived. Different from the usual ones. This one came from the old court, the council that ruled disputes between packs. "The Valdez have filed a formal complaint," he announced in the Great Hall. his voice echoing. They claim the Alpha King of the North stole legally purchased property, causing significant economic loss. They demand compensation or trial by combat. Dead silence fell. Izzy felt ice slide through her veins. This is because of me. No, Noel said, voice hard. This is because the Valdez are cowards who can't accept defeat. But it doesn't matter. I will go to the old court, present our case, and they'll demand I testify. Izzy cut in, understanding crashing down. They'll want to know if I was truly rescued or kidnapped, if my plea for help was real, or if you forced me to write those letters. Noel's face darkened. They won't dare. They will. Izzy stood, mind racing. And if I don't go, if you go alone, it will look like I have something to hide. Like I'm your prisoner. Absolutely not. Noel was at her side in 2 steps. The old court is dangerous, Izzy. Full of vicious politicians who would turn you into a pawn. I won't expose you to that. You don't have a choice. Izzy touched his face. Noel, if we don't do this the right way, they could declare our bond invalid. They could force me back. Or worse, they could declare war on the North. She saw the battle in his eyes, the instinct to protect versus the logic of what she was saying. We go together, she said, steady. And together, we'll show the old court exactly what happens when anyone dares question a true mate bond. Noel studied her for a long moment. Then something like pride crossed his face. When did you get so fierce? Learned from the best, Izzy said, a sharp little smile. So, let's show them. And when Noel kissed her, hard, quick, full of promise, she knew it. The real fight was only beginning. Chapter 9. The old court sat on neutral ground, an ancient stone castle where 12 alphas formed the Council of Judgment. Izzy felt every stare as she entered hand in hand with Noel. Judgment, curiosity, in some cases, open hostility. The Valdez were already there, 3 of them, including their alpha, a massive man with scars covering half his face. He smiled when he saw Izzy, and there was nothing kind in it. The lost merchandise, he said. Finally, Noel rumbled a low, dangerous growl. Peace, King of the North. One council member, an elderly woman with hawk-like eyes, lifted a hand. We are here for civilized judgment, not bloodshed. Then he should choose his words carefully, Noel shot back. The hearing began with the Valdez presenting their case, that Izzy had been legally purchased, that Noel had interfered in a valid transaction, that they were owed compensation, or the return of their property. Every word made Izzy feel sicker, more reduced to an object. Then it was Noel's turn. Izzy Marquez was not property, he said, his voice carrying without effort. She was a wolf in desperation, sold by a cruel family to cruel buyers. She invoked the law of the sealed letters, a law older than any modern contract, and I answered. He produced the letters, still stained with Izzy's tears. Read them, see her desperation, and then tell me I was wrong to save her. The council passed the letters among themselves. Izzy watched expressions shift, some softening, others staying carved from stone. The law of the sealed letters is ancient, the elderly councilwoman admitted, but rarely invoked, and there are questions about whether it applies when monetary compensation has already been paid. So you put a price tag on freedom? Izzy heard her own voice, surprised to find herself standing. You're saying because my parents sold me for gold, that gold matters more than my choice? My life? The Valdez Alpha smiled. Contracts are contracts, sweetheart. You may not like it, but I was infertile, Izzy cut in, and a fierce satisfaction surged when he blinked in surprise. That's why my parents sold me for so little. That's why you accepted the discounted price. Because I was worth less. Because I was defective. She stepped forward. But here's the truth every one of you has ignored. I am not defective. I am a whole wolf, valid, worthy of choice, freedom, and respect, whether or not I can bear pups. Her voice rose, years of pain sharpening into strength. And if this council decides contracts matter more than lives, gold matters more than fate, and my infertility makes me less than wolf, then this counsel is wrong. Absolute silence fell. Then Noel was beside her, his hand finding hers. My mate spoke the truth, he said quietly. And I'll add this. If this council tries to separate a true mate bond recognized by the gods themselves, you will be declaring war not only against me, but against natural law. And that is something you cannot win. The Valdez Alpha stood with a snarl. You're going to believe her? A wolf who ran from an arranged marriage and now spins stories about magic letters to justify— They aren't stories. A new voice cut through the air. Everyone turned. At the back of the hall, a figure had appeared. A woman so old her skin looked like parchment, yet her eyes burned with undeniable power. She wore the robes of a forest elder, one of the neutral witches who guarded old magic and ancient law. Elder Miriam, the elderly councilwoman rose, bowing with respect. We didn't expect your presence, and yet here I am, Miriam said, walking forward with steps far steadier than anyone her age should have, because I felt the moment the law of the sealed letters was invoked. And I came to ensure it wasn't profaned by fools. The Valdez Alpha paled slightly, but held his aggressive posture. With all respect, Elder, magical laws do not override contracts. Contracts made under coercion, selling a living soul as property, are void under every true law. Miriam snapped, her voice sharp as a blade. And you, Valdez, have a reputation. 5 wives in 10 years, all mysteriously dead in accidents. You think we don't know? Murmurs erupted among the council. The Valdez Alpha went rigid. Proof, he spat. You have no proof of— I don't need proof to recognize a predator when I see one, Miriam said. Then she turned to Izzy. Child, show your mark. Izzy hesitated only a heartbeat, then pulled back the collar of her dress, revealing Noel's mark, the snow wolf and stars, still new, but unmistakably real. Miriam touched it lightly, and Izzy gasped as magic swept across her skin. A true bond, Miriam declared, her voice echoing. Sealed by the gods, recognized by the land itself. There is no power in this world that can break it without destroying both souls involved. She swept her gaze across the council. So here is my judgment, carrying the weight of ancient law. Izzy Marquez is the rightful mate of Noel, Alpha King of the North. Any attempt to separate them will be considered a profanation of a sacred bond. And the Valdez, her eyes fell on the Alpha like a hammer, will receive a single compensation payment of 10 gold coins for the inconvenience. But if you ever attempt to purchase another she-wolf as property, the full force of old magic will fall on your house. Understood? The Valdez Alpha looked ready to explode, but even he wasn't foolish enough to challenge a forest elder. Understood, he hissed. Then this hearing is concluded. Miriam struck her staff against the stone floor, the sound ringing like a bell. Let it be a warning. The old ways still live, and they protect those brave enough to invoke them. When they left the old court hours later, Izzy was shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline and exhaustion. We won, she whispered, barely believing it. You won, Noel corrected, stopping to face her as snow drifted down, turning the world into something enchanted. When you stood there and claimed your worth, when you refused to be diminished, Izzy, you were magnificent. Tears stung her eyes. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Noel said, brushing her cheek. It's acting anyway. And you, my fierce Luna, showed a kind of courage that shamed alphas. Izzy laughed, half sobbing. I just wanted them to stop calling me property. And they never will again. Noel kissed her forehead, then her lips, gentle and reverent. You're free, Izzy. Truly free. Not even the old court can touch you now. On the journey back to the north, Izzy felt something inside her shift. That last chain, the fear everything could be taken, the fear she didn't deserve happiness, finally snapped. She was free. She was chosen. She was loved. And when they reached the castle at dawn, when Noel lifted her into his arms and carried her over the threshold the way tradition demanded, Izzy knew what she needed to say. Noel, she said when he set her down in their rooms, the third ritual, consummation. Noel went perfectly still. Izzy, I'm ready. She touched his face, seeing hope and fear tangled in his eyes. Not because it's expected, not because we completed the other two, but because I want it. I want you. Completely. Are you sure? His voice was rough. Because I'm sure. Izzy smiled. Show me, Noel. Show me what it means to truly be yours. And let me show you that you're truly mine. And when he kissed her this time, when gentle hands guided her to the bed, when they came together beneath soft moonlight and whispered promises, the bond completed, and Izzy finally understood what it meant to be whole. Chapter 10. 5 years later, Izzy stood on the castle balcony, watching snow fall like diamonds under the solstice sun. Below, the courtyard buzzed with life, wolf children playing, adults preparing for the night's Christmas festivities. You're going to catch a cold, a familiar voice said behind her. Izzy smiled without turning. You know, I don't feel cold anymore. 5 years as Luna of the North made me immune. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and Noel kissed the top of her head. 5 years, he murmured. And I still wake up some mornings convinced I dreamed you. A good dream, I hope. Izzy turned in his arms, rising to kiss him. The best, Noel breathed against her lips. In the 5 years since the judgment, so much had changed. Izzy had found her purpose, not as an incubator or decoration, but as a healer and counselor. The clinic she built treated not only physical wounds, but emotional ones. She-wolves came from distant territories seeking refuge, and Izzy always made room. The northern pack had tripled in size, made not only of wolves born on the land, but of those who chose to come, drawn by stories of a place where worth wasn't measured by battle strength or reproductive ability, but by character. And Izzy and Noel, though they never had biological children, became parents to dozens of orphans they took in. The castle now echoed with laughter, tiny footprints, and unconditional love. The celebration starts in an hour, Noel said, brushing his nose against hers. And Yara threatened to turn me into an ice sculpture if you're not there for the opening speech. Izzy laughed. We can't have that. Come on. As they walked down together, fingers intertwined, Izzy passed a mirror and stopped. Her reflection startled her, the way it always did. The woman looking back was not the shattered, frightened creature from 5 years ago. This woman had confident eyes, a real smile, a posture that said she knew her worth. You're beautiful, Noel murmured, appearing behind her in the reflection. I'm happy, Izzy corrected softly. It's different. In the great hall, the celebration had already begun. But when Izzy entered, wolves turned and smiled, not from duty, but from genuine affection. Luna, a little girl, Mia, 6 years old, whom Izzy had rescued from an abusive pack 2 years earlier, ran to her. Look, I decorated a whole tree all by myself. Izzy knelt, admiring the crooked ornaments made with love. It's perfect, sweetheart. You've got talent. Mia beamed, then sprinted away to play. You changed this place, a voice said. Izzy turned to see Tobias, older now but with eyes still bright. When Noel ruled alone, it was just a castle. But you turned it into a home. We did, Izzy corrected, finding Noel across the room. He stood surrounded by young wolves, laughing at something one of them said, so different from the lonely king he'd once been. The festivities went late into the night. Dancing, music, more food than anyone could possibly need. And when the moment came for the traditional speech, Noel pulled Izzy onto the platform with him. Pack, he said, his voice carrying. 5 years ago, I made a choice. I chose to answer a letter written in desperation. I chose to believe in old laws. I chose to open my heart to possibility. His eyes found Izzy's, and the love there warmed her clear to the bone. And that choice gave me everything. A mate, a family, a purpose. It gave me you, every wolf who found the courage to come to the north searching for a better life. It gave me a future I never imagined. He extended his hand, and Izzy took it, letting herself be drawn to his side. So today, on the solstice, we celebrate not only the season, but choices. The choice to believe in magic, to fight for freedom, to build family not of blood, but of love. The pack erupted in cheers, and Izzy felt good tears sting her eyes. Later, when the crowd had thinned and they were finally alone in their rooms, Noel pulled Izzy into his arms. "Happy?" he asked, though he clearly already knew. "Beyond words," Izzy answered honestly. Her fingers brushed the mark at her neck, now silvered with time, yet still burning softly. "You know, sometimes I still think about that night. When I was so desperate, I wrote to a childhood myth. And I thank the gods every day you were real. That you read my words and came." Izzy smiled. "That you gave me choice when you could have taken it. That you showed me being infertile never made me broken." "You were never broken," Noel said fiercely. "Only wounded. And look at you now. You healed not just yourself, but dozens of others." Izzy leaned into him, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "We built something good here. We built something extraordinary," Noel whispered, kissing her hair. "And we'll keep building, for decades, for centuries if the gods allow." "Centuries," Izzy echoed dreamily. "You know, I used to be afraid of the future, afraid of hope, afraid of happiness, afraid it would be ripped away. And now?" Izzy lifted her head, meeting those silver eyes she loved more than life. "Now I can't wait to see what comes next, because I know whatever it is, we'll face it together." Noel kissed her, deep, sweet, full of promise. "Together," he murmured. "Always." And as snow fell outside, turning the world into a white and silver fairy tale, Izzy closed her eyes and let herself believe in what once felt impossible. Happy endings, true love, home. Whispered epilogue for the one listening. So, now that you've come this far, what moment hit you the hardest? Was it the humiliation of Izzy being sold like property? The instant Noel appeared as the impossible answer to her prayers? The courage it took for her to stand before the old court and declare her worth? Or maybe it was something quieter. The first kiss under the stars, the mark sealing, the arms that finally made her feel safe. Stories like this, wounded she-wolves finding kings who see past scars, old laws protecting desperate hearts, are what set the soul on fire. Because all of us, in one way or another, have felt defective. All of us have begged to be seen. And all of us deserve our own version of Alpha Noel. Someone who chooses us, not in spite of our wounds, but with them. If you want more stories like this, more supernatural kings, more ancient magic laws, more heroines who discover they were always enough, leave a comment. Tell me, what part of this story resonated most? The romance? The magic? The healing journey? Because there are so many stories waiting to be told. Vampire kings and blood pacts, cursed alphas and forgotten witches, always with that spark of destiny, romantic tension, and endings that make you believe in magic again. Until the next full moon, my wolves. And remember, you were never defective. You were only waiting for the right moment to be seen. The end.